Today we are going to discuss about the first chapter from history, the revolutions that influenced the world. In this chapter, firstly explains about what is revolution. Here we are going to discuss what is the meaning of revolution. We can simply define the revolution as the change the existing system by establishing a new one. We can see so many revolutions take place in the different parts of world. For example, French Revolution, Russian Revolution, American War of Independence, Chinese Revolution. If you are ready to analyze any revolution, we can see there happened a change in the existing system and at the same time established a new one. The major factor that stimulated the earlier revolution. Which are the important major factors that stimulated the earlier revolution? We can say it is the Renaissance. What is Renaissance? Renaissance is the revival of European art and literature during 14th and 15th centuries. Renaissance made significant changes in human thought, views, and life. Let us examine them. First one, humanism. The Renaissance brought in Europe humanism. They ready to give importance to the human being and feelings of human being. Then another important factor is scientific temper. During the time of Renaissance period, the people ready to give more importance to the science. The next one, rational thinking. In this period, people began to think reason-based thinking or rational thinking. The next one, spirit of inquiry. The people began to inquire. They want to know. They want to discover something. They want to invent something. This way, the people completely stand for the spirit of inquiry. Renaissance gave birth to Enlightenment in 18th century. What is Enlightenment? We can define it as it is an intellectual and cultural movement developed in the 18th century in Europe. The thinkers of this movement gave importance to reasoning. It is an intellectual and cultural movement developed in 18th century Europe that is called as the Enlightenment. Thinkers of this movement propagated the ideas like freedom, democracy, equality, and nationalism. Then we are going to discuss about the American War of Independence. Firstly, we study the causes of American Revolution. Which are the important causes? First one, colonization. Britishers colonized America. Columbus reached in North America in 1492. Following the path of Columbus, from the 16th century onwards, the Europeans began to migrate to North America. The major aim of this migration was to exploit the resources. By the 18th century, England had established 13 colonies in the eastern coast of North America. One of the important causes of the American War of Independence is colonization. That is, England established 13 colonies in the eastern coast of North America. Then second cause is the mercantilism. What is mercantilism? We can define it as mercantilism is a policy implemented by the British merchants with the help of their motherland in the American colonies, which means mercantilism is an economic policy implemented by the British merchants in America with the support of their motherland, means with the support of Britain. What is the peculiarity of mercantilism? In which the British treated the American colonies as centers for collecting raw materials for their industry and as a market for selling their products. Mercantilism based on some laws. It is called as the mercantilist laws. Which are they? There are 5 laws. The first one, the goods to and from the colonies must be carried only in British ships or ships built in the British colonies, which means the people in colonies only allowed to use the British ships or the ships built in colonies. Then second one, products of the colonies like sugar, wool, cotton, tobacco, etc. could only to be exported to England. British stamp must be affixed on all the legal documents, newspapers and pamphlets, license, etc. The next one, colonies must be provide food and quarters for the British troops which were maintained in the colonies. Colonies compelled to give food and accommodation to the British soldiers. Then next one, import tax must be paid for the import of tea, glass and paper. These laws is commonly called as the mercantilist law. Another important cause for the American War of Independence is the ideologies of the thinkers. Some of the important writers ready to inspire the people in American colonies. The first one is John Locke. What says the John Locke? He says, everyone has some fundamental rights. No government has the right to suspend them. And at the same time, another important writer, Thomas Paine. Thomas Paine says, there is something absurd in supposing a continent be perpetually governed by a foreign power, which means not allow to continue the foreign power in America. The entire continent assembles. The 13 colonies in America suffered more because of the colonial attitude of the Britishers. So they decided to struggle against the Britain. This way, they conducted a meeting of the colonies. The First Continental Congress in 1774 at Philadelphia. What is the main decision taken in the meeting? They submitted a petition to the King of England. They demanded the revocation of the regulation enforced on the industry and commerce. They demanded to avoid the regulations enforced industry and commerce in America. Then, not impose tax without the approval of the people, but the king sent a military force to suppress the people. This led to the war between England and colonies. Then they conducted another meeting that is called as the Second Continental Congress. It is also held at Philadelphia in 1775. That is called the Second Continental Congress. In this Congress also they take some decisions. They elected George Washington as the commander-in-chief of the Continental Army. Then A pamphlet by Thomas Paine titled Common Sense was distributed. A pamphlet is distributed in the meeting. Thomas Paine declared in that notice or in that pamphlet that it was wise for Americans to break the ties with Britain. Thus way, on 4th July 1776, American Continental Congress issued a famous Declaration of Independence prepared by Thomas Jefferson and Benjamin Franklin. The war between England and the colonies started with the Declaration of Independence and ended in 1781. According to the Treaty of Paris in 1783, England ratified the freedom of 13 colonies. According to the Paris Treaty, a treaty signed between England and American colonies, that is called the Treaty of Paris, which was signed in 1783, England ratified the freedom of the 13 colonies, which means the England agreed the freedom of 13 colonies. The Constitution Convention held at Philadelphia under the leadership of James Madison framed American Constitution. A constitution was formed for America. Thus way, George Washington became the first president of the United States of America. Then we are going to discuss about the results or influence of American War of Independence. Which are the important results of American War of Independence? First one, gave direction and motivation to the later freedom struggles and revolutions all over the world. It became a motivation to later revolutions like the French Revolution and the Russian Revolution. Then second one, put forward the concept of republican form of government. It put forward, which means the America prepared a republican government. So it put forward the concept of republican form of government. Prepared the first written constitution. The next one, contributed to the concept of federal system that ensured the freedom and authority of states in the union.